The pageantry of a recent state visit to Great Britain. The monarch entertains a communist leader with all the pomp and ceremony that only a free Western nation, decked with all the trappings of traditionalism, can mount. A sight thousands turn out to watch. It's like many other state visits for Queen Elizabeth, except for one thing. Her visitor is the president of a communist nation, Romania's Nicolae Ceausescu. It's the very first time that a Warsaw Pact leader has stayed as a guest at the royal residence of Buckingham Palace. It's just one of the many ways that Ceausescu's making history by building up strong relations with NATO countries and working to establish Romania on the world's stage. Romania is bounded by communist states and has an 800-kilometer border with Russia. Despite the vulnerability of this geographical position, Ceausescu is determined to follow an independent course, founded on his misgivings about possible Soviet intentions. Nicolae Ceausescu is all-powerful in Romania, President, General Secretary of the Communist Party, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and Head of the Security Services. He makes all the major decisions, yet he's one of the youngest leaders in Eastern Europe. Many of his attitudes have been influenced by the line of President Tito of Yugoslavia, a country with a similar soft brand of communism. Tito's famed as the leader of a communist nation that's fiercely independent of Moscow. That's a reputation that Ceausescu would dearly love to equal. Ceausescu was a communist by the time he was 16, though he's always stressed that Romania and the needs of his country are his paramount interests. He's even been imprisoned a number of times for illegal political activities. But at the end of the Second World War, when there were only 1,000 official communists in Romania, he emerged as a force to be reckoned with. Now, the military leader of the past sits as president in the palace of the king that his party displaced. Romania is a Marxist dictatorship. Even so, President Ceausescu goes to great lengths to court public approval. A dedicated communist, he's forged strong economic ties with Russia, but he's determined Romania should stand apart from Russian dominance. He's achieving that, walking a tightrope to balance both relations with the Kremlin and cooperation with as many foreign statesmen as he needs. Ceausescu shows genuine concern for the plights and progress of other nations. He's reported to have been an intermediary in the Middle East crisis, and President Sadat is even said to have got the idea for his peace initiative visit to Jerusalem on his way home from this visit to Bucharest, Romania's capital. Since Ceausescu became Romania's leader 12 years ago, he's made 140 visits to foreign countries, as well as entertaining a number of leaders at home. It all helps to build up fruitful diplomatic relations around the world, vitally important if Ceausescu is to maintain his independent line. And so far, he's been very successful. For instance, Romania's the only communist country to maintain diplomatic relations with Israel, and there's even an Israeli airline office in Bucharest. Ceausescu's relations with leaders in the Western world and China are frowned on by the Soviet Union. We asked him how he'd sum up Romania's relations with Russia itself and with other Warsaw Pact countries.
Atât vizita în Statele Unite, cât și vizita în Republica Populară Chineză și alte
both the visit to the United States and the visit to the People's Republic of China and to other socialist states in Southeast Asia are part of Romania's policy of expanding relations and collaboration with all states, irrespective of their social system.
Fără nicio deosebire de orientare socială. În ce privește colaborarea și relațiile României.
As for Romania's cooperation and relations with the Soviet Union and with the other socialist countries of Europe, I should like to mention with satisfaction that they are getting better and better. Our work together, both bilaterally and internationally, is being carried on with good results in the interest of a policy of security, peace and cooperation among nations.
De securitate, pace și colaborare internațională se desfășoară cu rezultate bune.
Ceausescu is moulding an independent communism because he insists that it's the only way ahead for Romania. And if Romania is to modernize, trade with the West will play an important part in that. When the communists took over 34 years ago, there was very little industry here. It was a backward agricultural country. Today, Romania has the highest growth rate in Europe, with industrial production last year up by 12.5%. This expansion is fueled by reinvesting a third of the gross national product into industrial development. But the cost of this is severe infringement on personal liberty. For instance, people are told where to work. They can't live here in Bucharest without a permit. Other sacrifices resulting from this single-minded dedication are the longest working hours in Europe, compulsory overtime and low wages. Housing conditions are crowded and often shabby. Many have obviously been built with haste and are mainly for peasants who've been directed to become factory workers. Providing improved accommodation is not a priority at the moment, and it's not likely to be for a while. The reason? The devastating earthquake of March '77, which wrecked nearly 3,500 flats and claimed 1,600 lives. The cost to the country was a mighty $2 billion, a great drain on resources that had been accumulated specifically to finance further investment in industry. The earthquakes also proved wasteful, diverting valuable labor into the rebuilding of shops and flats that were destroyed. Many soldiers, in fact, are used as construction workers on sites like this one. The regular army is supplemented by 95,000 conscripts who do 16 months compulsory service. Usually, a year of that is spent working on such projects. In spite of the cost of the earthquake, Romania's economy is still booming at the rate of 10% a year. But with so much organizing effort aimed at industry and exports, people still have to queue for essentials. The paperwork and the distribution simply can't work. For some of these people, it's been as much as a 3-hour wait, and that's just to buy an everyday commodity such as a loaf of bread. Problems like this are caused because so much of people's lives is controlled by Bucharest. Now, though, the government's aiming at decentralization, and with new measures due to be introduced, private enterprise will have a good deal more freedom. But already there is one alternative to queuing at some of the state shops. This typical fruit and vegetable market is purely private enterprise. With the new measures, state subsidies are going to be halted, and private enterprises will have to pay their own way by gearing output to demand. That will mean a much better system of shopping. Before the last war, Romania's economy was based on agriculture. 8 out of 10 people worked on the land. Today, half the country is under agriculture, but less than 4 out of 10 are farm workers. The agricultural land of Romania is divided into cooperatives or state-owned farms, but it's obvious from their old-fashioned methods that the all-out campaign to industrialize is taking precedence. There is a long-term plan to update farming methods, worthwhile, because investment in agriculture could make Romania a valuable food exporting country. And there's even interest in joining the International Monetary Fund, a body viewed by Moscow as an arm of imperialism, but one which could plough in the money Romania's farming needs. Many farm workers have been sent away to towns where they have to adapt to a completely new way of life. They're retrained and then put to work in factories. The summary movement of labour is one of the schemes that's making some people wonder whether the moral satisfaction of political independence really compensates for such sweeping changes in their lives and the fact that theirs is the lowest standard of living among the East European communist states. Despite simple traditional farming techniques, Romania does export some of its foodstuffs, especially fruit and cereals. Although it's not a major aspect of the export drive, Romania's food factories also make a healthy contribution. The food industry as a whole contributes about 15% of Romania's exports, and with relations with Western nations improving, this figure's likely to increase. Trade figures have already changed dramatically. In the last 25 years, Romania's trade with Western countries has trebled from 15 to 45%, while trade with Russia stands at only 17%. These statistics demonstrate how the policy of President Ceausescu is successfully building an economy which is not dependent on any one country, though it's meant a life with precious few luxuries for the workers.
E greu să fiu de acord cu ceea ce
I can hardly accept the description of austere when in the 5 years between 1976 and 1980, the real income of the working people is going to increase by over 32%, and the consumptions per head of certain agricultural products and consumer durables will reach or even exceed the level of some developed countries.
It's from industries like steel that the prosperity will come. Unemployment is not tolerated. Everyone has to work to make full use of Romania's varied resources. The pressure is always on to work hard, and it's certainly drummed into workers at this shipyard at Constanta. There are signs telling them that 5 minutes laziness a day by every worker means the loss of a 150,000-ton tanker. It's another page of the President's blueprint for turning Romania into a highly profitable industrial nation, exporting manufactured goods, not merely raw materials. The minimum wage for an unskilled worker here is $900 a year and just over $1,000 for the skilled. But there's a 5-year plan to increase the national average wage by 32%, with a higher bonus when targets are exceeded. For example, these people who work in a factory making electrical apparatus have had good results, and they've been awarded a 36% pay rise over the next 5 years. This particular meeting is being held by the factory workers' representatives, the Working People's Council. They're rather like the shop stewards who speak for workers in the West, only these people also run the factory. It's a collective leadership, and they're discussing how the new pay rise should be distributed. Refineries, power, a new revolution. Spiky silver fingers of factory chimneys probe the skyline over a landscape that's never known such a change. Amid the timeless countryside, the president's plan becomes a reality, largely due to Romania's one big bonus, a plentiful supply of oil. Until recently, the country was totally self-sufficient in oil, but with increased industrialization, they now import a third of their demands, principally from Iran. Oil's not only a crucial cornerstone in the economy, it's sparked off another money-earning business. So efficient have the Romanians become in making oil field equipment to harness home supplies that they're actually selling their machinery abroad. But as with every developing nation, there's a two-way flow. Heavy industrial goods go from Romania, but expertise in many fields still has to be imported. This irrigation scheme's an example of a project that the country isn't yet ready to mount for itself. Instead, this pumping plant was built by a British firm to irrigate the plains with water from the Danube. The irrigation scheme is part of a state-financed plan to increase agricultural production. The real benefits won't be felt, though, until it's completed, not until 1990. Surprisingly, tractors and agricultural equipment in general are part of Romania's export trade. Surprising because there's little evidence of them on their own land. These women are planting artichokes, and they maintain that it's easier by hand. But it seems they've really got little choice, for most tractors go for export where foreign money can be earned, and that's the priority. It's certainly a country of mixtures, and that's true of the population as well. There's a considerable number of Hungarians living in Romania, and they've brought their own culture with them, Hungarian theatres, and as many as 32 Hungarian language newspapers. Allegations of discrimination against Hungarians apart, it seems they do get every chance to play their part in society. Many of the children at this school are Hungarian, and they appear to be the best of friends with the Romanians in the playground. A few old people to this day speak only Hungarian. They remember Transylvania when it belonged to Hungary, and the complaints of discrimination come mainly from the older generation. The Hungarian children are encouraged to maintain their cultural identity. Even so, they're forced to learn Romanian so that they can become properly integrated into the society. For the children, it's a foreign language. To the state, the national tongue. Many lessons are in Hungarian, so they don't fall behind. But there's no doubt whose country they're in. The Romanian government insists that these children should always be proud to wear their Hungarian national costume. Still, whatever their nationality, they are citizens of Romania, and they can enjoy all the rights laid down in the country's constitution. But since they're a part of the country's population, they share with other Romanians all the restrictions of Ceausescu's regime. On the other hand, tourists, the non-resident foreigners, get to enjoy all the best that Romania has to offer. The Romanians are a peasant people, and they've retained a strong and vigorous folk culture. Their colourful traditions, like their language, derive from several ethnic roots, which accounts for their variety and richness, which never fail to attract the tourists. Visitors from Western Europe and America have been particularly encouraged by promotion through the National Travel Office. Advantageous exchange rates on the currency are offered tourists, one reason why 3.5 million visited Romania in 1975. The number's been growing ever since. And it's not just the sea and the sand of the coastal resorts that bring outsiders to Romania. Inland, there are sights to see, places to visit. Here, for instance, at the edge of the beautiful Transylvanian Alps. If it weren't for the queues, this scene could have come straight from the history books. A lone monastery, its style typical of this part of the world. It's not surprising that many people come to see it, because it's regarded as the most beautiful church in Romania, and it's also one of the most important architectural monuments in Europe. But Romania's chief claim to fame rests in the ruins of this medieval castle. The prince who built it has been immortalized as the fictional character called Dracula. The original prince was actually called Vlad Dracula, Dracula in Romanian meaning son of the devil. He's also known as Vlad the Impaler, and he became all-powerful over the land and people around him. He was gruesomely famous in his lifetime for impaling prisoners, and this is just one of the dungeons where the victims were held before torture. This dam is built in the gorge, which once marked the limit of the Ottoman Empire. It's where Dracula impaled 20,000 Turks on wooden stakes, though he actually put to death 5 times that number during his 6-year rule. But it's not to pay homage to Vlad Dracula, a national hero, that Romanian tourists come here. The hero now, in this part of the country, is progress like electrification. In Bucharest, the future is well planned. The government's determined to instill its dream for the country into the people, a dream that's less easy for the people to appreciate than the politicians. For it's ordinary Romanians who are making sacrifices in the name of progress, and the men and women in the street who are paying for it by putting exports before luxuries and toil before leisure. No one escapes the drive to work, to pull Romania ahead by sheer physical effort. For that's something this country has in abundance. And if people aren't allowed to go to waste, neither is the very soil of the country, even here in the center of the capital. Few countries can be as thrifty as this, using traffic islands as gardening plots. President Ceausescu promises his people that the sacrifices will be worthwhile. The real rewards, he says, will come by 1990. That means keeping the bit between their teeth for at least another decade.